Most people, if you ask them who the most famous traveler in history is, will answer Marco Polo. If you give them a bit more time to think, they might add a few more names, but almost no one mentions him. But there was a quieter truth hidden beneath the surface of history, a truth rarely told, and once you hear it, it changes the way you see the world. Because around 700 years ago, long before airplanes, long before modern maps, before the concept of tourism even existed, a man set out on a journey. And he didn't just change cities. He kept going, for years, crossing continents one by one, passing through worlds most people never even imagine. His name, Ibn Battuta. But what makes his life remarkable is not just how far he traveled, not how many places he visited, not even the fact that he traveled continuously for nearly 30 years. What makes his story different is why he began. Because he didn't travel to conquer, he didn't set out to rule an empire, he didn't seek respect or recognition, he set out to understand. Now stop for a moment and think, really think about this. The year is 1325. You are in Tangier, Morocco. You are 21 years old. Your life is just beginning. You have a home. You have a routine. You have a sense of security. And yet, something feels missing. A quiet unrest. A question you cannot fully answer. And one day, you listen to it. A voice inside you says, go. Begin the journey. Not because it's safe. Not because it's logical. Not because it's planned, but because it feels true. Where will you go? You don't know. How long will it take? You don't know. Will you ever return? You don't know. And yet, you go. Because sometimes decisions are not made with certainty. They are made with courage. At first, the journey has a clear purpose, the Hajj, a spiritual obligation, a direction into the unknown. But some journeys do not remain what they were meant to be at the beginning. They evolve. They grow. They begin to create their own path. And at some point, the destination loses its importance. The journey itself becomes the purpose. For Ibn Battuta, this transformation happened slowly. At first, he was not alone. He joined caravans, walked with those who knew the roads. There was structure. There was safety. There was a goal. But time changes everything, and the road quietly takes these things away. The further he went, the more unpredictable the world became. Every step felt more uncertain, and eventually, he found himself on roads with no clear end. He crossed deserts, endless sands and seas, days blending into nights, a horizon that never changed, moments when even the wind lost its direction. Imagine it, no signs, no place, no certainty, only silence. And in that silence, something happens. You separate from the outside world and begin a journey inward. At night he lay under the stars. The sky was his map. There were no borders, no walls, only infinity. And perhaps for the first time, a person truly understands how small they are. But this didn't bring him despair. On the contrary, it brought him clarity. Because the smaller you feel, the more open you become. And with every hardship, something else grew inside him. Not power, not comfort, only curiosity. Then came the cities. Cairo, a center of motion, a city where trade flowed like veins, markets filled with noise, with color, with movement, gold and silver constantly changing hands, ideas spreading just as fast. This wasn't just wealth, it was energy, and he didn't just pass through, he observed how people behaved, how they traded, how they built trust, or didn't. Because for him, cities were not made of buildings, they were made of systems, and those systems were not built with stone, but with human behavior. Then Damascus, more structured, more controlled, but just as complex. Then Mecca, a spiritual center, a place where the journey should have ended. But for him, it was the true beginning, because Ibn Battuta did something most people don't. When he reached his goal, he didn't stop. He continued. And that decision changed everything. He went to Persia, to Iraq, to East Africa. Each place was different, each unique. But behind all these differences, he noticed something deeper. The world changes, but people don't change as much as we think. In India, he saw power, palaces, authority, wealth, but also fear, because power always carries fragility. In the Maldives, he saw a different life, different rules, different systems, but humans, still the same. In China, he saw order, planning, systems, but again, people driven by the same emotions, fear, ambition, hope, desire, and over time, the journey stopped being about geography. It became a search for patterns. What makes society strong? What makes them weak? What allows them to grow? What causes them to collapse? Everywhere he went, he asked the same question. What holds people together? Because wealth alone was not enough. He saw rich but unhappy cities. Poverty was not the problem either. He saw poor but stable societies, and he realized civilizations are not built with resources. They are built with relationships, trust, justice, shared understanding. Without these, even the strongest structures collapse. With them, even the simplest societies stand firm. Ibn Battuta didn't present this as a theory. He didn't write it as an equation. But between the lines of his journey, you understand it clearly. Power is not in walls. It is in people. And this brings us to today. We live in a more connected world than ever. We have technology. We have communication. We can explore everything. But an honest question, do we truly understand? Or are we just consuming? We discover places, but we don't understand them. We know people, but we don't listen. And because of this, the world feels smaller. But for him, it was endless, because he didn't just pass through. He connected, he listened, he observed, he reflected, and that made the difference. Today, we are fast, but he was deep. We access, but he sought to understand. Maybe that's the real difference. Discovery is not distance, it is attention. And that's why his story still matters today, because it reminds us of something simple, something we don't want to hear. The world didn't get smaller, we did. And maybe the real question is not, how far can you go, but how deeply can you see? Because some people don't just live, they discover, and some journeys never end. And Ibn Battuta tells us this. The world is far greater than you think, but what makes it small is your perspective. If this felt different to you, it's only the beginning, because history doesn't just tell the past. It shows you the system behind it, and once you see that system, you don't just understand history, you understand the world, and maybe yourself.